and welcome to this week's Invisible Not Broken. I have a guest I have been slightly cyber stalking since she wrote me. I will gush for just a minute. Her name is Lisa Sniderman, and when she wrote me, and she's like, so I do this beautiful music also, and I wrote a book. I started stalking her music, and it is fairy and light and gorgeousness, and I am completely hooked, and I will be buying every album. I've been listening to it all day, which has really been helping my writing as well. And speaking of, she is an author, and she wrote A Light in the Darkness, Transcending Chronic Illness with the Power of Art and Attitude. So anyone who knows me knows that I saw that. I was like, yes, of course I'm interviewing you. Also, I didn't know this, or didn't know if you knew this, but we are going to be friends now. So the idea of art and chronic illness is huge for me. And I'm going to probably, this comes out on September 21st. So if you head to the show notes, there will be a big button that will take you directly to the sale of her book. So head over to show notes, and I will also have a link to her YouTube channel and anywhere else I can find her music so that you guys can just easily discover the bright, lovely fairiness that is Lisa. You go by a different name for your music, though, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it because I'm bad.
No, you're doing awesome. I want to say thank you so much for that just loveliness and gushing. It's really very kind and sweet.
And everyone who knows this podcast knows I'm not lovely or gushing, so this really
I know, right? From
you.
listening to you, this is like sort of a 180, and it's really cool because I love that I have that impact. Yes, my persona, my artist persona is Aeide, like A-E-D. Aeide is the muse of song in Greek mythology. And I picked that name because I wanted affiliation with inspiration and the muse. And that happened way back in 2006 or so, having had no idea of what was to come in my world and in my health. And I actually really embodied that muse, right? I embodied that theme in so much of what I'm doing now. So it is a perfect name, and I guess it's just very fitting, that that's become a journey of the muse.
You have been on one huge journey, and I don't even know where to start, so I'm just going to start through diagnosis.
Yeah, I thought you were going to try it.
No, I'm not singing. No. Both of my children as babies would put their hands to my mouth to make me stop singing. No one wants to hear me singing.
I'm not going to sing diagnosis for you. I'm going to tell you it. But okay, so here's what I'll say. Picture yourself, right? It's 6 weeks before you're getting married, and you're about to go on tour to promote your first full album. You're working full time. And imagine you get a skin rash and you go to a doctor appointment thinking, it's a dermatologist. He's going to give you some topical skin rash cream and send you on your way. And instead, he tells you you have a rare, unpronounceable disease and refers you to a rheumatologist. And you're 36 years old. That sets the stage. So when I was 36, which is just now about 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with a rare disease. And it was right in the middle of life craziness, as is apt to happen, right? And so the real diagnosis of my disease is called dermatomyositis. It's a progressive muscle weakness disease. And if folks have heard of lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, things like that nature, it's in that rubric. So it's a muscle disease. Does that help?
That helps tremendously. I'm in awe of all of you who have gotten your diagnoses later in life and have not been sick until later in life. I mean, I've been sick since I was 8, so it's my world. I don't know how all of you process chronic pain and chronic weakness if you haven't been dealing with it. And you had a wedding that was coming up. That must have been a lot of really intense, husband-wife discussion before. I'm just amazed. My husband was my best friend for 3 years, so he watched me through all of the good, the bad. He knew all of this before we even started dating. How did this affect both of you? I mean, you were right on the cusp of, okay, so we are a team. We got each other's backs for better or worse, healthier and sicker, and then sicker comes along way faster.
Well, it's true, but we also had the benefit of having that partnership for a couple of years before we got married. I've been with my husband now for 16 years, married to him for 10. So we had almost 6 years of non-illness to get to know each other and, see what we're really like without a patient caretaker relationship. But I will say that honestly did change once I was getting sick. The real thing was once I got the diagnosis of rare autoimmune disease, I instantly, grabbed him and asked him if he still wanted to marry me because it's not like I thought, he's going to say no. And if he did, he probably wouldn't have been the right partner for me. But I will tell you how much my decision of him being the right partner, like some examples of this, like during the worst of my disease, I had a flare and that was in 2010. And what was happening is basically dermatomyositis, like I said, is a progressive muscle weakness disease. So during this flare, I wasn't able to move any of my muscles. And it came on very suddenly. And it put me in the hospital for about a month. And I had no use, right? I had to go through rehab and relearn to walk and relearn to sit and relearn to play music and sing and all of those things that I cared about. So where was Dave, my partner, along, with all of this? Right by my side, right? The whole entire time he was at the hospital. And same with my mom, by the way, who flew in the morning that I checked into the hospital. She flew on a flight from Arizona, and she was with me. So
Go
I'm
moms.
kind of painting a picture to say that support was like huge and still is for helping through, these just unspeakable and really difficult times. But what happened is, like, he would have to work a full day and then he'd go to the hospital, and he'd be with me. When I was finally ready to come home, he built a ramp, right, so that I could have my wheelchair, have make room for the equipment and make sure that I had what I needed. He made me shakes when I had to gain strength and take in a lot of protein each day. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But you don't know, until you get sick, how that relationship with your partner is going to be. And I was just completely fortunate that my partner did not, run the other way for one, or say good luck and, that's it, right? I mean, yes, it's for richer and poorer. Yes, it's in sickness and health. But when the shit hits the fan, right? What is really going to happen? And, I'm sure you have your own experience.
You know, I hear this a lot because my husband and we have like almost an annoyingly good relationship. We still discussed everyone, and we've been married for 12 years, and we still text each other every day, and we're gross. We're still romantic, and a part of that is that when you're sick, you don't get to do the big things. Like, you can't go do the big gestures, and if he suddenly surprised me with a night out, it would be that he didn't know me at all because I can't go on a night out. So we've been doing like date nights, but in our own way. So it really does force you to try to really get to know the other person and what works for them, for what romance would actually mean for them. So you really have to like work on the friendship part, and you have to have each other's back. I mean, that's just kind of like the basis of any relationship, is you have to have someone who has your back.
Absolutely. And then if you add, you having a chronic illness on top of that, it just, for me, for example, it became less about what we did and more about being together, because I had to get over my own guilt and issues of
how did you do that?
Right, like preventing him from doing things that he might do were I to be healthy. In other words, like if he likes to go hiking and be outdoors, and he would do, ski patrol for a long time, he was, doing things that were taking a lot of strength, stamina, energy, and things that frankly I did not have anymore. So the question was he going to stop doing all those things or continue to do them because they, helped shape him and give him things that I couldn't. And what we kind of came to mutually was a compromise at times, right? He would do those things for him, but most of the time we agreed that, hey, it isn't about what we are doing. It's about being together. We've already had 6 years, we thought, to go out and see the world and do all these things in that way. So I'm just so fortunate that I have a partner who is so compassionate and understanding in the way, he's accommodating. He knows. And he's the first to check in on me to say, like, hey, you've had, 3 interviews today already. Have you taken a nap? It's the same thing, like, the texting and that kind of stuff. We have each other's backs in that way.
That is so sweet. We just started doing our dates at home. So we actually do set up like a little table out. We have this great bedroom with like French doors out to the backyard, and we sit outside with like the glass of wine, and like we just have our own little, yeah. Besides, since I can't leave the house, that's what we'll do. We'll have the date in the house. I mean, we do have like the wolf and the pug like snorting around, which really adds to the romance when you have a pug snorting by your legs, but
I love that you have a pug. I love that you have a pug. I have a wire fox terrier. I should say we, because it's husband and I. We don't have kids, but we have our, dog child, and such a huge part of my heart and our home. And so to hear, and Alice's best friend is a pug, and so therefore, okay. Do you want me to?
Yes.
Pick her up?
Show me Peppy. I am like the biggest dog person in the world. I will stop anyone with dogs. Oh my God, that face.
Yeah.
Oh, puppy.
She's super, super cute.
Oh my God, I'm dying.
So the comments we get about Alice usually are, is she a stuffed animal? Are you sure that that's a real dog? Can I touch her? Can I pet her? That's the most adorable dog I've ever seen, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm thinking she proves that Brian Froud is God and actually designed an animal that we have here. Like, that is a Brian Froud fairy dog.
I have to say, while we're talking, that you have amazing energy. Like, my energy is good. I will completely, fully disclose that I've had 3 interviews today, and I've also started, editing those interviews. So I have not had my requisite nap. And I can feel it in my voice. But I'd rather come on your show and be honestly me and authentically me.
Please.
Because this is where we are, right?
Well,
and after this, I say I'm going to go take a nap. I will probably finish what I needed to do and then take a nap. That is the reality.
That's a good asterisk to put by all of this. You missed the 2 hours before where I was crying in bed, curled up, and my husband had to my foot bones completely dislocated, and I almost had to cancel because I was like, they're everywhere. This is like Dolly designed by foot. Like this is sculpture. This is no longer a functional skeletal system, and we got it all back into place. So I'm able to do this. But you missed all the fun right before I got onto this.
You are a trooper, but I can tell already from listening to you and from what I know about you how much you persevere. It seems like, and that we need these kinds of exchanges, connections, and art. So we talk about being my friend. The feeling is moo, because I try to surround myself and attract the people that are going to lift me, and then I can lift them, right?
Yes.
And so when you started talking about the book, for example, the reason I wanted to bring back to that is because I realized that part of my story is sharing my experience and sharing in order so that others have an opening to share as well. And that's what seems to be happening. And that's an effort that has also been started, is something that I'm doing called Lights in the Darkness. So,
please talk about that. That sounds beautiful.
Okay, so here's sort of the origin of this, is that I said, okay, I'm going to share my story. I'm writing a memoir. And I want to think, first it was literally just a way to say, I don't want to go to a Barnes & Noble and have like a book reading. That's not me, and that doesn't reflect my journey and my story. And what I did want to do was collaborate with other artists who are also creating to heal. And I put a little post, like a call for, passionate artists, musicians, and authors who are creating to heal. And I put that out in May, and I've just gotten like an overwhelming response for people who are interested in participating in such an effort. And I didn't want to make, one event that's one geographic location, because it's very hard. Say, what location are you again?
I'm just across the bay from you.
You're not!
I am. I'm like 30 minutes from you without traffic.
Normally we'll be like, oh, I'm in Minnesota or whatever. Okay, that makes more sense. Sorry.
No. If either one of us could have driven, we could have done this face to face, but we might as well be in Minnesota.
This really wild. Okay, well, anyway, my point is that, um, so, oh God, now I'm getting distracted. Let's see.
I'm really good at it. You have absolutely completely pinpointed how Kyros has to always bring me back. It's like I will talk about everything and anything, but maybe back to this project you're doing. I mean, the one thing that I think that people don't understand about technology when they talk about the good old days and not having the distraction is that they
Yeah.
miss that when you're sick, this is a way that you get to put your art out there. Hey, heck, even if you're not sick, this is how you get to put your art out to the world, and you can collaborate in ways with people all over the world.
Absolutely. So what I was going to say, and thank you, it did actually bring that back to me, which was just because you might be in the other part of the bay, all the way over there. I didn't want it to
Berkeley,
be.
yes.
We're going to have an event in December that's live performance in Redwood City, and that is not that far from you. Okay, good. But I also wanted to make it an online experience because I understand, especially with chronic illness and all the people in my world that might want to access something like that. So I decided I would make a video component. Well, that has blown up, and I'm now interviewing more than 42 right now people who are artists, musicians, and authors using creativity to help heal. And that's taking the form of either healing themselves or healing others. And just talking about their experiences with creativity and healing and, learning from them has been really, transformational for me too. It's a new path, right? It's something that I didn't know that I was going to do, right? You kind of introduced me as, I don't know how you introduced me, but I'm a singer songwriter. I am a recording artist. I'm a voiceover actor. I'm a teaching artist. And now I'm an author. I'm sort of becoming a filmmaker, right? Like all these different hats are making up what's me. But I don't really understand it until I just sort of follow my muse, and that's what's happening.
Anyone who's listening to this right now who knows me personally from like before knows that I'm absolutely adoring you right now so much.
Oh.
It's like when your body is not allowing you to do everything you said you wanted to do. Like no one grows up thinking like I want to be in a wheelchair. I want to like when I grow up, I want to be Meg in Little Women. That sounds great.
Oh yeah.
So we have to find different ways to stay alive mentally, creatively, spiritually. And when we don't get to have that big outside focus, it's amazing what you can find interior wise, especially like I just so resonate with fairy tales and fantasy. You just rocked my world with that. And I'm thinking like maybe for you, I know it is for me. I spend a lot of time not being able to get out of bed, a lot of time being stuck. And to get unstuck is really to go into that fairy tale fantasy world. Is that what you're finding with your fantasy feelings?
That's what I discovered, and part of it was actually writing the memoir that helped unlock and unleash this for me, is that I was using my musicals and my escape into fantasy and bright and light as a way to cope with the day-to-day of living in the darkness, except that I didn't really know that. I didn't consciously know. For example, I have a musical called What Are Dreams Made Of? And the general concept is light and dark. The whole idea is that my protagonist, Aedy the Muse, has a terrible reoccurring nightmare, and she must confront goblins, dream gods, and other nefarious creatures. I can't remember. And she has to get to the heart of her dream in order for it to stop. Okay, so here I am inventing a world that has light and dark, and I even have a character who's overtaken by a siren, and it becomes, like she descends into darkness. And here I had no idea until I was writing my memoir that I was really acting out aspects of what I was going through, dealing with and plunging into my own, dermatomyositis and living with that. I mean, it's almost obvious, painfully obvious, but I really, as I was doing it, all I was thinking is, this is escape. This is a way, like, I don't want to deal with that darkness. I'm going to write bright songs like you're hearing, fairy tale love. It's the epitome and the opposite of what my day-to-day darkness was like. So yeah, you're right. I definitely used it, but I really did not consciously think I'm going to write a musical to process that.
And that's
Yeah.
probably for the best that you can go into it going, this is how, because then you're limiting it into a box. At least I'm just speaking from personal
Taken up
experience, like
it
with
may
my
have
own
taken
art.
a different place. I might have taken it to a different place if I had gone into it with intending, to like right now, I'm intending to create a piece to share my story for that December event. And I will consciously take parts of my songs and my story and create something. You know what I mean? That's a totally different intention than I want to create a fantasy musical. Also, I'm really different as an artist because most artists don't create full musicals and record them on audiobooks. It's imagine, for example, you're listening, it's like a radio play. So you have dialogue and sound effects and sound design and character voices and narration and songs and instrumentation. And it's a full, say hour and 47-minute, production. And so you really don't see a lot of artists doing that. And then I take that and I try to adapt them to theater. So I'm trying to adapt that to productions. So all of that is sort of my process for not focusing on illness.
So, what I love so much about what you just said is you explained how this is possible. You explained how someone like any of the people I've interviewed, even the teenager I interviewed over in Wales, that this is, if you put into bite-sized chunks, anyone who has a story and a spirit can create real art from bed, from an iPad. And that just sparks my whole brain on what is possible, especially if someone who has the stamina issues and the exhaustion. And it's not that you necessarily would be sitting there for 12 hours doing this, but you might be able to, like, depending on what anyone's disability is, this is something you could break into bite-sized chunks and create something really beautiful and special to share with the world. Or at least just to distract yourself from whatever you're going through.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of distraction.
To me, it's both aspects. It's the creating and it's also the sharing. So one aspect so I guess for my process, it's been expressive first. I was just doing it to express. Then I learned that what I'm doing is also having an impact on others. And whether it's something like what you just said, how my songs made you feel, right? That's one thing that by sharing it, we have a connection now. And that's different. And that also helps me heal. That helps you and that helps me heal, right? So to me, it's that whole process that you're getting healing both from the creating and the sharing.
And is that going back to your book, A Light in the Darkness, Transcending Chronic Illness Through the Power of Art and Attitude? My brain is on I know the book's title. I just have to say it right.
You'd have to say like the entire title. You could say A Light in the Darkness. It's totally cool. So,
but once I start going, it just kept going. Yeah.
I know, it's funny, isn't it? So it's been really special. It's my first book. It's coming out, like you said, 9 days, right? So
I'm so proud of you. It's huge.
Right. Me, that's like, and that's the other thing. These little or big milestones are really special. Like first, success. Like we can totally talk about like what does success mean.
Let's discuss that right afterwards because that's a big topic.
Yeah, it's huge. But the reason we'll go back to success. But my point is that putting the book together is one of those moments where, you can just say like each moment along the way was a small success. That's all I'm trying to say. One is just the envisioning. I want to do it. The next is putting it down on paper. The next is finding the editor, right? The next is, restructuring the whole damn thing because it's really not where I want to be, because you always end up learning tons more from what you don't do right than what you're doing right. Okay. So the short story behind that really quick is I wanted to put out something that was like confessions of a singer-songwriter who became a muse. And I wanted it to be all journal style, day 1, day 5, and that, frankly, I'm actually going to put that back in and create a piece around that for December. But that aside, I went back and realized that in order to have impact and to be inspirational, which is what the muse is supposed to be, right? I think I need to structure it in a way that's more of my life lessons, supported by my journey and my stories along the way. So I really put my book together thinking about, for example, struggling with a body in revolt, or redefining success, or facing your fears, following your bliss. I'm reading my chapter titles, don't mind me. Putting yourself there, surrounding yourself with cheerleaders, finding positive role models, celebrating abundance, keeping your dreams alive, and being a light in the darkness. By putting some of these, or by telling you these chapter titles, what it is, it's a sort of setting the stage for people who might be going through something. It doesn't even have to be the same disease, or even a disease. It could be a life challenge, or a unexpected life event. Whatever you're going through, these are some of those universals, that hopefully, by reading my story and understanding how, one way just that I've processed things, that you might get some hope, some inspiration in order to keep your dreams alive, right? And that's the biggest thing, is that just because you have a chronic illness doesn't mean you can't live well with chronic illness, and you can't also keep your dreams alive.
That's I don't think there's many more important lessons that can be taught with chronic illness, especially, I mean, like, for someone who has just been diagnosed. There's so much that you're saying goodbye to. And even someone like me, where I've been sick for a long time, but my disease changes. My disorder changes constantly. There is no, it keeps me entertained. It is never boring. I am never bored. But I'm always saying goodbye to something. I'm always having to let go of something. And it's always important to learn that that's not necessarily the end of everything. That's the start of something new. And that's a new challenge.
Right. And so when I would say for people, when you're first diagnosed, there's a ton of things that you're already getting transitions, right? And so one of the big things is that recognizing that, like I said, dreams don't have to die. They can change from what they once were. So here's a perfect example. I was running a writing session for the Myositis Association's conference last September in San Diego. And it was just an opportunity after we did the writing. And I'll be honest, the writing was just an opening so that we could all share. It wasn't about necessarily what we wrote about that we're talking, but people one by one wanted to have that opening and share. And so what happened is somebody was sharing how the dream that this person was a pilot in their past life, quote unquote. And once they got, myositis, and they could no longer physically do this kind of work, they kind of gave up for a while until they rediscovered a way that they could keep that dream alive, which was to be a flight simulator instructor. And so they were able to pull what they loved in a way that was still, with the limitations, realistic limitations they had, and still do that dream. And like you were saying about, people who are in bed, I mean, here's an example of a fan who contacted me and inspired Perfect Day, which you may have heard. Perfect Day was inspired by somebody who has a muscle disease and cannot get out of bed. He's on breathing tubes. He's at the hospital half the time, but he is so positive, and he's a webmaster of an orchestra, and he loves ship spotting that he does from the help of his wife to go take pictures. And because of this, and because of him wanting to promote artists that he finds online, surprisingly, I was really moved, by his story, and sparked to write a song, for him. But my point is, even somebody who's in bed doing things like that, you got to find reasons to be and purpose, right? We're all worthy, and we all need purpose.
Let's see my tattoo here. It says purpose and possibility with my aunt's initials. It's my memorial tattoo to her, but it's the idea that we as humans, like, in our hierarchy of needs, a big part of that is purpose and possibility. Like, we have to know that we have a possibility beyond what we are, and we have to know that we're purposeful. Like, those are the building blocks of almost sanity, at least for me.
Yeah, and also that we're not just a burden on both the people that we love and our society, because disability, especially, and people with illness, a lot of times, right, we're seen by others as perhaps not having joy, perhaps not having purpose, perhaps not being capable of what neurotypical people are capable, not neurotypical, but you know what I mean, of what, I won't even use the word normal. It's just so low. It's of healthier people, right?
Even if I was healthy, I was never going to hit the bar of normal. It was not happening.
Normal, yeah, it's not my vocabulary, but anyway, I think you understand what I'm saying. It's that it's hard enough that to redefine, right, what it means to live with illness. I think that the more that you do these podcasts, the more that inspirational people that are doing really good things and positive things and making a difference and finding joy, that should be the message that we spread, not what we can't do and what our limitations are.
I can understand where you're going with that. There's a little bit of me that's like, I definitely have my dark moments, and I've been trying to be way more honest with everyone about my depression and the dark stuff, because I realized that when I was hiding it, it wasn't helping. It wasn't helping me, at least for myself. Just totally personal stuff there. But you had talked about fans, and I wanted to get to that for just a second, because I don't know if people understand how important that is when you reach out to someone, like anyone, like any author or a creator, and just tell them what it means. Because the emails I've gotten, I can't tell you. There's been so many times I've been ready to end this podcast because I've been so sick, and I'm like, I cannot keep going. And I get an email, it's like, okay, so I'm going to keep going. And like my books that I've written, half of them would not exist. Like most of my books would not have gotten finished if a kid had not asked their parent when that book was coming out, and then the parent emails me and goes, my child just asked me. I'm like, all right, so tell your child thank you, and now it's going to be out in 3 weeks. I will get this for your kid. It will get I have to do it for someone, otherwise it doesn't happen. And like your fan who wrote you, I don't think people realize, like, even not to say I'm famous, I'm certainly not, but they're like, I think anyone wants to hear that. Everyone needs to realize they're not in a vacuum.
Absolutely. Everyone also, I feel like, needs to have that sense of worth. When we talk about purpose, but also worth and dignity and contribution. And so it doesn't matter, to me, whether it's artistic or another vein. I have a friend whose disease is a similar one to mine, and she has gone into patient advocacy. That's the direction it took her. And helping others, process what this is like. And so, I actually had her on Conversations on Creating to Heal, because it wasn't necessarily that she was turning to art, but it was that was, for her, that is her expression, is patient advocacy, right? So I've found that so many things are also like, the artist is within, you know what I mean? You are an artist, and it doesn't matter whether you're painting or doing poetry or making a film or doing this. It's like, you just call yourself an artist. And so, yeah.
No, you make such a good point. And I wanted to ask you about success, because you had started to talk about it, and I really think that is such a sticky word. And you got to experience an adult life before being sick, where success probably meant something very different for you than where you are now. Can you talk a little bit about your journey with, like, your understanding and your expectations of success?
Yeah, sure. So the idea of, in the music world, that's where I basically have my first professional, right? If I call myself a professional, it was first as a singer-songwriter, then as a playwright, and now as an author. So it's an evolving journey. And even before that, actually, let's go to environmental scientist, because while I was having the experience, it's like a double path of being a singer-songwriter while I was working full-time. And that was all happening, by the way, when I got diagnosed. So, part of this is just probably a ton of stress from all of these things happening where you're on go, 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 like an Energizer bunny rabbit. Okay. But that said, success was very different at that point, right? In some cases, success is a paycheck. So when I was working for the state as an environmental scientist, it was strictly, going and being in my field of passion, feeling like I could affect change and make a difference, and then taking home a paycheck. Like, all those things were success in my industry. And then as a singer-songwriter, they're just these little arbitrary points that I would define success. So, for example, it might be put out an album because that's a goal of mine, and if I reached that goal, I felt like I had achieved success. Versus, at some point when you start getting industry success, industry recognition, that's a different level and type of success. So, in this time between 2012 and 2018, I've received more than 50 awards for different aspects of my art. And that's all while having a chronic illness. So for me, I look at that also as a form of success. But at the same time, I'm going to be totally honest, I am paving my own path. So it's not like I'm looking at success based on a tour, right? Some people, musicians, would go, okay, I'm going to record an album, then I'm going to go tour. And that's a traditional way that a lot of artists would have, or I'm going to open for somebody like Taylor Swift or Molly Cyrus or, whatever it was, Demi Lovato, somebody, right?
I have a preteen, so you just like totally went through my world right now.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I have Taylor Swift going through the house on almost link.
Excellent.
I'm starting to have a new respect for Taylor Swift. Like,
absolutely, right? And reputation, baby, reputation.
After what she did with the Me Too movement, I'm like, I will never say a disparaging thing about that woman ever. Rocking.
Yeah, exactly. I actually have a lot of respect because she's being a good role model for women, and she's,
and my preteen daughter, I am all good with like her strength. Like,
it's awesome in some ways, So, but my point is that was the trajectory ended up really changing. So as I've come different places in my career, success has meant so many different things. What about, like, let's go back to being in the hospital. All success literally was, can I sit up today? Can I move can I, in PT, can I use my hand to open something? Can I close and open? The one huge success for me was putting a 2/3 size guitar in my arms and playing what I called my anthem through the storm, called What is it? What You Got. And the reason that was big for me is because, I most desperately wanted to learn to play and sing again. So having just that, child-sized guitar in my lap, even though it was like I had no core strength, I couldn't sit up, I couldn't hold myself up. But when I played that, I knew that, it was going to be okay. Like something inside me knew, right? So I would say success is all relative. It's all based on like what it is that you're dealing with in that moment and what your sort of what your world is. Does that make sense? Like in the professional world,
the most beautiful thing I've ever heard is the idea of you sitting there with this child-sized guitar going, I'm just gonna sing and play because this is my heart and this is what I do. That's beautiful. And you're right, in the hospital, it really, me and hospitals are not friends. It does absolutely change everything, because when you get sick, your definition of success changes so drastically. Like my friends who have had breast cancer, it was, I have all these career goals. Now I need to survive to next year, and that's the only goal I have. And with my physical therapy, it can get very intense. And it's like, okay, so no other goals today except I need to do my bridges. That's all I am counting on, is to do bridges today. Like, that'll be successful.
That's
your bar
too.
changes.
Yeah, exactly. Your baseline changes, your bar changes. But, I also feel like it gives you freedom, because then you can not have to have the weight of the world on you. It gives you permission and freedom, right? You're not having to say, I also have to take care of this and this business and take care of the dog and wash the floor. And right, all those things sort of go away when you start kind of being mindful of what it is, right? And so, to me, self-care is very big. I think that we all need to have, I hope we can make the space for self-care, because so many people, unfortunately, do live that life where they're, making ends meet, and that's really, really hard. They may not have
listened to this podcast.
Yeah,
we talk about income inequality all the time here.
Yeah,
you're right. I mean, I'm guessing you're in a similar boat where it's really lucky to have a steady wage earner that is your partner who helps with that. I can't imagine dealing with the stress of because I'm on disability. So I have a very fixed income that comes in, and people have said some very interesting things about that when they've learned I'm on disability, and to explain that if I didn't have a husband bringing in money, there's no way my children and I could even afford a room and food. Like that would be beyond us, let alone the healthcare. So it's not, when you have someone to take that stress, that's incredible. But you're right with self care. It's so funny how we look down, and that also goes back to income inequality because I'm political. I'll do this. But there's a lot of judgment on people who have a fixed income and they take care of themselves. And I think it's so unfortunate because everyone needs that steam valve release, like all of us.
Yeah.
It's pretty extreme. I wanted to know how you stayed sane in the hospital. You were there for a month, and I can't handle a day. I start like twitching. Were you able to stay creative and artistic?
No, in those moments, that's when, okay, so you have to also remember that it's okay to totally surrender. And I mean that because if you give yourself permission to do that, you're giving. I was scared, I think, a little bit to surrender because I like control, especially when you're dealing with illness. There's so many things that are out of your control that the things you maintain control over give you power, and maybe help define you or give you a little identity. So it was hard. But when you're in crisis, that's a different situation. And I mean crisis. At the time, I was, say I was on prednisone, a steroid for my day to day. They had to increase that by 1,000 times. And then they, gave me infusions in ICU to try to get me to come back and, have some strength. And so it's all, you can't do anything about it. So all I can say is, no, I didn't go to a creative place. I went to two places. Family that was around me, so support. And I knew that even though I wasn't really like that conscious of everything that was happening, right? It's surreal. You still know because you've got that love. That love is permeating. So you might not remember who shows up, like who comes to visit you. And because you're so tired, that's what I remember most is like, I just wanted to sleep through everything. So I was, but this was years ago, I'm expressing something that happened years ago, and I'm so fortunate, right, that I can be talking about this in a way that's, that I'm in a better place, right? I'm very encouraged for where I am in my management of my health. But anyway, so that's the answer. I think it's surrender. And then you start realizing what's really important when you're at that place, for example, where what is going to make you want to get up in the morning? What gives you purpose when you can't do anything, and for me, that was music. And that's why even when I was completely unable to do anything except for be in bed, I still got a PR person. I still released music that I had recorded, and I got that out because for some reason it was a compulsion, to get music out.
So, sorry, I'm writing down my notes for you. You're like saying these amazing things. I'm like, fine. We're headlining with what gives you purpose on the show notes. That's amazing. What advice could you give? Because I know a lot of people who are listening to this aren't sick. They're listening to this because they want to know how to help their friend or their loved one or someone in their lives. What did someone do that really helped? Is there anything that you can think of that someone did like at the hospital or when you were first diagnosed or when you were first coming to terms with everything? Is there anything in particular that you could think of to give people advice on, like, how do you help your person?
Wow. Yeah.
Sorry, I just sprung that on you. That was that's the questions I gave you.
It's a great question. It really is. It speaks so much to the role and the importance of a caretaker, and again, I hate that I have a caretaker patient relationship or that I have so much with my husband. It's become less that because I can do more and more now by myself. But if you are fortunate to have, if you're talking about a significant other situation, then just kind of allowing your partner to understand what it is you're going through. So not necessarily holding back. Like it's not necessarily, they're not going to be your everything. But I think that it needs to be like you were talking about with your husband, that you need to sort of have a good enough relationship that you can, know and that person can sort of help you regulate, so that if there's times that you're really overdoing it, they're going to pull you back, and they're sort of your check. The other thing is a support network. So what really helped me was my outside network, so I wouldn't have to burden my parents and my husband or my friends about this too much. And that for me was a Facebook kind of situation, and finding like whatever your disease is. Mine is myositis. So I was able to go online and find everything I could learn about myositis. That's what I do. And so having your partner understand, this isn't necessarily for your partner, this is for you. You need a support network so that you don't have to burden your partner. And that means you can be with people who understand your disease, who understand what you're dealing with. You can ask questions so that things aren't so, unfamiliar and foreign. The other thing I guess that people have done that's been helpful for me is accommodate, understand that my limitations are realistic. The best way, for example, my producer, he would come up and spend a couple of days here. So when you're talking about doing those musicals, the only reason I could record at the time is because he would come here and we would do the recording at my house. Yeah, so people, and same, even today, people know that I don't drive. I can take Uber and Lyft, places, but that things are sort of like I have limited spoons. And so my stamina and energy is all based on.
What are these mythical spoons you speak of? I haven't seen one of those all day.
Yeah, if I had one, I'd be like, here, pretend this is a spoon. But some people know about spoons that are watching this podcast.
Oh, it's a great way to describe it. I just meant I have no spoons today. I've been like, where are my spoons? I was supposed to have at least one or two, and now I'm borrowing from tomorrow.
It's because I already did all these interviews today. But see, the nice thing about this is I got to ask everybody questions, and now I get to share. It's a very different experience when you're asking the questions, right, than when you're sharing your story. So anyway, it's all good. Anyway, so the other one is just having being clear, about your needs and limitations, so that your friends and family understand how they can help, right? So people know that I'm not necessarily going to be good out at night, right? So either they don't invite me, or they invite me and it's not understood that I'm going to be doing it, right? Or committing. Sometimes they understand that it means that I have to bow out, even though I'm really interested in doing something. Setting boundaries for yourself. I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm brainstorming. So
you're doing like some great brainstorming. Well, then I'll ask you, because you had mentioned something in your. I read through your questions a few times, because this is like, seriously, everyone got to show notes. Like, everything she wrote in the questions are beautiful and amazing. But you'd written something about like people saying like, oh, but you look lovely today. You must be feeling better. And like, I almost live in sheer terror, and I know everyone means it well. I get, it's like psychologically, I get it. Realistically, and you tell me I look nice, or you look good today, like that's supposed to be a compliment, but all I think is like, I need to explain that I'm not actually okay, or that this is just very temporary, and I get this anxiety. How do you deal with that? Asking for a friend, I have no idea how to deal with this gracefully.
It is always such a interesting point of discussion, in that I understand, I'm a seriously empathic person. So part of it is just like, I'll go there. I know that my friend means my well-being. And also it's easier for somebody if they see that you are well and good, then it's just an easier, more comfortable situation than for dealing with somebody who is sick, right? So part of it is like for them, and part of it is for you. So my answer is usually, I just accept that. I accept it. I'm grateful, and I appreciate their concern and interest, and usually thank them. I try to not add, but I'm not really that well. You should have seen me this morning, right? I just have to understand that when they saw me at that moment, I just have to say thank you. Do you know what happens when I do that? I also start believing it. And that's huge. If you can believe that you are actually feeling positive and radiating, you will. It's like if you're feeling like crap and you start to sing, you can't help but change that and elevate that spirit, but just because you started singing. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you go into an argument with your husband and like sing immediately, but like that, the idea
that could really short circuit an argument real fast in my household. That
would be kind of interesting, right? And in our
I'd
household,
love to see how that goes.
I think, yeah, exactly. But I guess, the short answer is they're really just meaning they know that you live with a chronic illness, unless this is somebody who doesn't know you and doesn't understand anything that you're going through. Okay, that's different. If you're talking about the people who know you and know what you're dealing with, they just are trying to, one, make you feel good. And if you do look like, I could say, you really look nice today on camera. Like, you really look like you're glowing, and then don't tell me 2 hours ago, I was just crying.
Oh, you mean like I did?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's fine. But my point is, like, just take it and go, wow, like, it just feel it for a minute. That's all. You don't have, that's my own experience.
So where do I send the check for therapy? Do I write that out to you directly, or?
Yeah, I'm queen of positivity. I will say it's not that I don't have those moments, but I don't dwell in them. I do not allow myself to dwell. I'll allow myself to feel everything, but not dwell, because I can't. I'll put it this way. I only have limited energy and stamina. I spend it on depression and things that are pulling me down. I won't, for example, I've decided I won't be around people who are a drain. I cannot take it. My body can't take it. That's why I don't go into places that are super stimulating for, inordinate amounts of time, if any. It's purposeful. I'm only surrounding myself with things that are going to build joy and positive energy for me, because I don't have the energy to spend on hard shit. You
make beautiful points, and you remind me so much of one of my favorite Neil Gaiman. I don't know if you would call it a poem or a spoken word, or like, what do you call Neil Gaiman's work? Like, I never know exactly how to categorize this. He's one of my favorite humans on the earth. Him and his wife, I'm just like, I would not like fangirl out over most people, but I don't know if I could actually meet either Amanda fucking Palmer, that is her name, there is no other way to say her name, or Neil Gaiman without going into full like gush mode. I would just like die. But he talked about that, whatever has gone horribly wrong in your life, make it art. That whatever is going on, you turn your suffering into creativity. And I don't know any other way to do it. Like, I really don't. I suffer a lot. I mean, that's no lie. I have mass dislocations multiple times a day. It bites. There's no other way to phrase it. But I write all the time, or I draw when my wrist isn't dislocating. Yay, wrist. And my son calls me, terminally optimistic. And
that seems like it really fits, because if you're not, just imagine the kind of sadness and the kind of what you're missing in life if you went through life with that attitude, right? Even for your kids, you're not even a great role model for them on how to.
Some would say I'm not anyway, but
stop. No. I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? One of the people that was on my show was just saying, like, she is saying that she's a role model for her kids on how to deal with adversity, and she does not want them to see her. It's not that she doesn't want to be real, you know what I mean? But she does not. She wants to give them ways to deal with things, not, curl up in a ball and stay there for, 5 weeks.
That's actually, you're so funny, because when I was crying earlier, my daughter came in and she was like, what can I do? Like, and I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I'm sad, and sometimes things are really bad. And honestly, I have to tell you, kid, it might not be comfortable for the other people in the room. But if I don't go through this, it just goes deeper, and it gets darker and bigger. Anything under the carpet gets bigger. So sometimes they're just going to have to be upset, and that's going to make everyone uncomfortable, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's true. And you have to do what you need, to make you able to get through the next day, that day.
Well, I mean, she's a girl growing up in this world. I don't want her to learn that she needs to make people comfortable at the expense of her emotional well-being. Like, I was taught. Like,
I would love that.
End that right here and now with this generation.
Yeah, I would love that lesson, because I'm such an accommodator in that fashion It is like, that is one of the things that I'm working on, right? Is it's okay to say to somebody, I need,
Mm-hmm.
instead of apologizing or asking for approval. And those are
Uh,
things that, really, I mean, it
can we
seems silly.
tattoo that somewhere?
I know, right? It's like, it's, if I say, I need to go take a nap, not may I take a nap, or I'm sorry, I'm going, I need to take a nap. It's like that needs to get out of my vocabulary. So I'm trying to be much more aware that, because I'll be a better human to other people. And that, that's another lesson I've gotten along the way, is that self love and that self care, self need, whatever. It's not selfish. It is
Oh.
preservation. It's like preservation. If you don't get your sleep, your meds, your whatever brings you joy, so your art, whatever it is, you can't be there for others. You can't, barely be there for yourself, but you have a daughter, you have a husband, you
And a
have
son
people,
and a
and
pug. The pug needs me.
your fans and your friends need you to be, right? So that's the way I can, justify sort of like, if I need to sleep or whatever those needs are, I try to look at it as like not selfish, but self love.
Oh my God, you are amazing. And I would kidnap you for the rest of today. But I know I'm like your last interview of the day, and I want to be mindful of your energy level. And we are almost at an hour. So I need to thank you, because this is, I have been looking forward to this for a month. And you just are, I would seriously kidnap you. You're amazing.
Well, I'd like to extend an offer and to continue, conversations, connecting with
Please.
you, with folks who are watching, if they're inspired or just want to have this kind of connection or ask questions. I'm open. That's what I'm here for. My book is coming out in 9 days, and we're gonna have a launch event sort of in December that's going to be celebrating all of these amazing artists who are creating to heal. So just stay tuned for that. I have a new website that I'll tell you, but it's not going to be out until closer to like next week. But it's called alightinthedarkness.info, and
Oh,
that's where
and
you're
it'll
going to.
be out when this comes out, because this comes out next week. So when everyone's listening to this, you should be up and running.
Awesome. Okay. Anyway, but I wanted to just mostly thank you for taking time, for making this available for all the people who need it. And for including me. I'm really blessed and appreciative. And yeah, thanks.
You have an open invitation to come on the blog, post things on the blog. You have open invitation to come back and discuss any panel about like staying creative while sick, or how to handle a hospital visit. You have open invitation. Just email me, and yeah, you have open invitation to just chat with me too. I like you. So thank you so much
Bye.
for coming onto the podcast. And I'm going to end with my always tagline, which is be kind, be gentle, be a badass. Thank you, everyone, so much. Our numbers were crazy last month. I beyond my wildest expectations. We don't advertise, so if you want to be really kind to us, go to iTunes, still best place, or Apple Podcasts now, I guess is what they're calling it, and say something embarrassingly nice about us. Share us with your Facebook groups. Share us with friends, family, anyone you'd like to understand chronic illness better. If you want to be really, really nice to us, and you can, we have a Patreon account, I think is how we say this. And anything you can donate, we're very grateful. Being sick in America is deeply expensive. So please tune in next week, and please, 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 please go to our show notes. We'll have links to everything this amazing woman does. Buy her book. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait to read it. So thank you. Have a great week, and we will see you all next week.